Hi, I'm Sharon from The Juicy Effect. This webinar has been designed to give you simple but powerful tools to support you moving out of a state of stress and back into a state of balance, both at a physical level and also by working with the mind. With the progress of the COVID-19 virus, life as we all know it has changed, and for many of us we feel as if life has been turned upside down. Whilst this will pass, what this event has taught us is that we need to be able to lean into a set of practices that will support us in finding balance when we are facing challenges. When we have these practices in place, it means that we will spend less time in less desirable states such as stress and overwhelm. When we support our body in maintaining its natural state of balance, we strengthen it, and one of the systems that benefits is our immunity. When we support our mind in finding balance, we are able to navigate our way through any thoughts and emotions that are triggered by external situations and find a state of calm clarity once again. And it is in this state of calm clarity that we make our best decisions and access more of our brain capacity. This does not mean that we will not topple over from time to time, as life has a way of presenting us with challenges that support our growth. But the important thing is that we know how to bring ourselves back into alignment and feel that sense of balance again. The intention for this webinar is that it is highly practical, so I will spend the majority of the time focusing on specific practices that you can use. However, to begin, I want to spend a few minutes talking about the connection between the mind and the body, and therefore the importance of working with both when we desire to cultivate a greater sense of balance in our lives. As I mentioned, I am going to be talking today about the body and the mind. However, you can't really separate the two. What is happening in any moment in our mind will directly impact our body. What is happening in our body will impact our mind. And the state of balance in both our mind and our body will impact our immune system. I'm not going to spend too much time going through the research that proves this link between the body and the mind. However, I will provide a very brief overview of two of the pioneers in this field, Dr. Candace Pert and Bruce Lipton, who have empirically proven the connection between the body and the mind. Dr. Candace Pert has been able to prove that every one of our thoughts has a direct impact on the body. Every one of our thoughts will create a feeling, which will trigger the release of a chemical in the brain, which in turn will release a cascade of hormones into our body that our cells respond to. So there are chemicals for enjoyment, for love, for anger, for sadness. In fact, there is a chemical that matches every emotional state that we experience. Our cells respond to these chemicals as they have little receivers known as receptors, which extend from the membrane of the cell. And the cell will then act on the information that it receives. If our cells pick up the signal for anger, it will act accordingly. If the cell picks up the signal for fear, it will act accordingly. So our thoughts and emotions are directly impacting our physical well-being every second of every day. Dr. Bruce Lipton was able to prove that these molecules of emotion impact what DNA is run inside our cells. When we experience love, enjoyment, bliss, a cascade of hormones are released into the body that our cells respond to. When we experience stress, worry, anxiety, a cascade of different hormones are released into the body that our cells respond to. In each case, we are sending different information to all of our cells based on how we perceive the situation we are in. And this is impacting what DNA is run inside our cells. The other important factor that impacts our cells is our lifestyle, the level of toxicity in our body, and what we eat and drink. Is all stress bad? Not at all. We need a certain amount of stress to feel motivated and focused. However, we want to develop practices for balancing our mind and our body that keep us from tipping into the overloaded zone. And when there's a lot going on in the world, it's a time for really leaning into our practices and adding a few more to our toolkit if needed. There is one last thing I would like you to know about the body before we start moving into the practical strategies for balancing mind and body. Our bodies are binary. We are either in a state of stress or we are in a state of healing and repair. And we will move between these states many times throughout the day. Problems only arise when we spend too much time in a state of stress, as there are a number of functions that shut down in the body when we are in this state. We have adapted to function and even thrive with short-term bursts of stress, but if the body and mind remains in a state of stress for long periods of time, as healing and repair is shut down, our immune system will suffer. Did you know that the same hormones which are released in the body when we are stressed are used by the medical profession to shut off the immune systems of people who receive transplants so that they will not reject the new organ? So it's important to have triggers and practical methods in place throughout the day to move our body and mind back into a state of balance so that healing and repair can take place. So the key points I would like you to take away so far are: our thoughts, emotions, and feelings are impacting our body chemistry every second of every day. Strengthening our immunity is both a function of physical health as well as balancing our mind and emotions. And it is important to have practices in place each day that move our body and mind back into a state of balance so that healing and repair can occur. So now I'm going to talk about practical strategies that you can use. Can you think of a situation recently where you felt stressed? You may have even felt overwhelmed. The question is, what can you do about it? If we find ourselves in a state of stress or overwhelm, there are 3 core ways to move ourselves out of that state. The first involves working with the body. The second and third way involve working with the mind. Let's look at how we can work with the body first. The quickest way to change our state is to disrupt the chemistry that is being released in the body by moving the body. Big, exaggerated movements are best. Exercise is great, but if you're in a situation where you can't exercise, you can still work with the body. For example, you could walk around while swinging your arms around. Yes, it may look a bit funny, but it will also do the trick. The main thing you want to focus on here is using big, exaggerated movements. As I said, what you are looking to do here is disrupt the chemistry that you are releasing into the body at that time. While you are doing this, check your posture and ensure that it is open. What I mean by that is, ensure that your shoulders are rolled back and your chest is open. Also ensure that your eye gaze is up and not down. A low eye gaze, for example looking at the ground, and a closed chest are associated with lower emotional states. By keeping your posture open, rolling the shoulders back, and your eye gaze up, you are supporting your body in moving into higher emotional states, such as optimism and joy. Check your breathing pattern. All emotional states are associated with a particular breathing pattern. There is a particular breathing pattern associated with anxiety, with anger, and of course with feeling calm. Slowing the breath down and breathing more fully and deeply will support you in shifting your body chemistry out of a state of stress. So continue doing this until you feel a shift. Move your body, open your posture, lift your eye gaze up, and change your breathing pattern by slowing and deepening the breath. The next 2 points involve working with the mind. We as humans have this amazing ability to use our brain, specifically our frontal cortex, to drive ourselves nuts. We can agonize over the past and rerun events in our mind as often as we like, and our body does not know the difference between something that we imagine vividly or something that is actually happening. We can worry about events that might happen that never actually happen. We can worry about things that are completely out of our control. We have the ability to stew over events rather than let them go. Basically, we have the ability to amplify the stressors that we encounter. So the first question we need to ask ourselves is, what are we focusing on? If we are facing a challenge, what stories are we telling ourselves about that challenge? What are the stories we are telling ourselves about the future? and what is actually true in that moment. The next area of focus to look at is the language that we are using. Consider the language in each of the following. Although this is one of the most difficult things I have had to face, I know I am resourceful, and I will get through this by keeping my focus on what I can do and what is in my control each and every day. I will take it one day at a time, reminding myself that is all I can ever do. So compare that to, this is a disaster. I can't handle another day of this. It is driving me nuts. When we find ourselves in an unhelpful story, we need to shift our focus and language, and this will change our body chemistry. We can't access all of our brain when we are stressed or overwhelmed, so we will miss opportunities within the challenge if we remain in that state. We need a clear and calm mind in order to see a clear path forward. So in summary, there are 3 core ways to move ourselves out of a state of stress. We can move the body, we can change our focus, and we can change our language. There is no doubt that life feels uncertain at the moment. Our world has changed, and we are all still trying to find our feet, as well as deal with not just the direct consequences of the virus, but also the secondary and tertiary consequences as well. And the emotions that will often accompany times of uncertainty are fear as well as anxiety. So it helps to know that these are the natural emotions that may come up. And quite often, we may also go through the emotions associated with the 5 stages of grief, as this too can accompany these times where we have experienced different types of loss. Maybe it's the grief of the loss of normalcy in your life or the routine that you had, or what you thought you would be doing or moving towards. Maybe you have lost someone close to you. Maybe you are grieving the overall loss of face-to-face connection. You may instantly recognize one of these stages or emotions as coloring your world at this time, or you may be cycling through many of these different stages and emotions in a day. This will be very unique to you and what is going on in your world. Whatever it is for you in this moment, it helps to know that it is natural to experience all of these emotions, from denial to anger to bargaining, to feeling low and depressed and acceptance. And we can move through these in any order. Emotions are energy in motion, emotion. And the easiest and quickest way to move through an emotion is to lean into it, to recognize it as a number of sensations that we experience in the body, to name it, to breathe into it, and then to allow it to move through the body. Let's look at this in more detail. This practice offers a useful framework for allowing the energy of emotions to flow through us in a healthy way. Remembering that emotions are energy in motion. They're designed to move through us like a wave. We just want to understand their message and then move on. When we do this, it means that we're less likely to act out in unhealthy ways. So, for example, taking our emotional states out on others, or overusing things like alcohol, food, and TV to distract ourselves from our emotions and to deny their existence. So the first step is to lean into the emotion. Identify where you are experiencing it in the body, and notice what the sensations are that you're feeling in the body. Step 2 is to identify and label it. So what is the emotion? If you were to give it a name, what would you call it? Is it anxiety? Is it anger? Is it resentment? Putting the best name that you have to those sensations that you are feeling. The next step is to accept the emotion. Breathe into the sensations. Following that, we want to remember the impermanence of emotions. So just reminding ourselves that emotions are like waves. Continue to breathe and remember that they will pass. They will move through the body. That's how they're designed. Step 5 is to ask ourselves, what is the message? So what triggered the emotion? Ask yourself why you feel that way. And once we have the message, step 6, we let it go. We continue to breathe and just allow the emotion to move through the body. We looked at this earlier, but I just wanted to highlight that when you are experiencing strong emotions, you may need to move the body in order to support the emotion in moving through the body. So far in this webinar, we've looked at ways that we can move ourselves out of a state of stress and how we can deal with emotions as they arise. Now I'd like to move from these more reactive strategies to proactive strategies and how we can build some psychological immunity so that when we are impacted by a stressor, it is less likely to impact us. Just as we have a physical immune system, we also have a psychological immune system. Our psychological immune system is directly related to our mind and our nervous system. A psychological immune system creates a buffer in the mind and a feeling of strength in the nervous system, so that when you are faced with a stressful situation, rather than being rattled by it, you will be able to deal with it while allowing the negative effects to slide off you. To build our psychological immune system, we need to both calm and strengthen our nervous system and our mind. And the easiest way to do this is to work with the breath. As I mentioned, one of the best ways to work with the mind to build psychological immunity is using the breath. And this particular breath practice, called alternative nostril breathing, not only builds psychological immunity, it relaxes and strengthens the nervous system, and it calms and relaxes the mind. It is best to do this practice in the morning, as for most people it is easier to work with the mind in the morning. However, if this does not work for you, you can do it at night. As I mentioned, it will help to create a buffer in the mind and a feeling of strength in the nervous system, so that when you are faced with a stressful situation, rather than being rattled by it, you will find it easier to deal with it and allow the negative effects to slide off you. To make life easier, we've created a video for you to watch which explains exactly how to do this breathing practice, and this can be found at the link provided. Now I'm going to look at one of the most important foods that you can eat for supporting your immunity. To do this, I need to explain why gut health is so important to our immunity. Did you know that 70 to 80% of our immune system is found in our gut? The microbiome refers to the trillions of microscopic bacteria that live in the intestines, and our overall health, including our immune system, depends on that balance of microbial life within our gastrointestinal tract. So to support your immune system, you can add organic fermented vegetables into your diet that contain natural probiotics or natural good bacteria. And these foods, fermented foods that contain natural probiotics, have been part of most traditional cultures. Sadly, of course, it's something that we have lost touch with within the Western world. Effective sleep is essential for healing and repair to take place in both the body and the mind. However, if we're going through a stressful period, sometimes it can be difficult to sleep, or we do not sleep particularly well, and this sets up a vicious cycle, as it will deplete both our physical immunity as well as our psychological immunity. So what are the practices that we can put in place to ensure that we do get a restful night's sleep? Just as our physical body digests our food, our mind digests our experiences. Whatever we do not digest or process during the day, our mind will try its best to process it at night. And this means that our minds will be very active and busy with the day's events, and it also means that our minds will not be moving into that healing and repair state. So to stop this from occurring and to assist the mind in processing the day's events, a brain dump can be very useful. A brain dump involves supporting the mind in working through any confusion or unfinished events from the day. Often we will not know exactly how we feel about something until we move through this kind of process. So a number of key questions you can ask are as follows. Is there anything on my mind or occupying my mind at this time? And if so, what can I do about it? Do I need to speak to anyone about it? What actions do I need to take? Is there anything I can do better? What is outside of my control? The important thing is that you write out the answers to these questions. The idea is to take the information out of the mind, and the process of writing out the answers will trigger additional thoughts and insights. And most importantly, it takes the pressure off the mind to process the situation, freeing up your mind to have a good night's sleep. So what are the other practices that we can do that will support resting the mind and body and triggering a healing and repair state? We can also use a guided visualization such as Yoga Nidra to quieten the mind before sleep. And it is said that a 30-minute Yoga Nidra practice is equivalent to 2 to 4 hours of sleep, as we move through all of the brain waves that we would experience while sleeping, but it is done in a compressed amount of time. So this is an extremely useful practice to incorporate into your routine to build psychological immunity. In fact, doing a brain dump and then listening to a 30-minute Yoga Nidra practice is a powerful combo for building psychological immunity. There are lots of free Yoga Nidra resources available on YouTube, and I've provided a few examples for you to check out. We can support our immune system by working with the unconscious mind. Our unconscious mind is very powerful. Numerous cognitive neuroscientists have conducted studies that have showed that only 5% of our cognitive activities, so decisions, emotions, actions, behavior, are conscious, whereas the remaining 95% are generated in a non-conscious manner. Did you know that the unconscious mind controls all of our body's vital functions? Most importantly, our beliefs about our health and our immunity, which are stored in the unconscious mind, have a direct impact on the strength of our health and on the strength of our immunity. How strong do you believe your immune system is? This belief will impact its strength. During these times, we can all benefit from boosting our belief in the strength of our immune system, as well as in our own individual power. To do this, I like to work with my unconscious mind to program it for optimal health. A great time to do this is while we are going to sleep. When we are in that state just before sleep, that alpha, theta brainwave threshold, we are in the optimal state to program our mind. Whatever we feed our mind during this time goes straight through into our unconscious. So feed your mind positively during this pre-sleep time. Feed your mind thoughts that will empower your health and your immunity. And another great time is while you are exercising in a rhythmic way, for example, either walking or running. When you're doing this, you're more likely to move into a light meditative state. And here's an example of a track that I've been listening to on YouTube for this purpose, 200 plus immune system boosting affirmations, but there are many other resources that are available as well. So I'm just going to quickly recap what I've covered so far. If you find yourself in a state of stress, there are 3 core ways to move yourself out of that state. You can move your body. You can also work with your mind to change your focus. And you can also change the language you are using. If some difficult emotions arise, move through the following process. Lean into the emotion. Identify and label it. Accept the emotion. Remember its impermanence, ask what is the message, and then let it go. Build psychological and physical immunity. Do alternative nostril breathing for 5 minutes a day. Morning time is best. Eat fermented foods that contain natural live probiotics. Do a brain dump before sleep. Do a Yoga Nidra guided visualization before sleep. And program your mind with empowering thoughts during either pre-sleep or during exercise.